Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's Bronze Q&A session. My name is David Rivers. I am one of the No Limits Action Coaches. My territory area is West Berkshire, West Oxford and South East Wiltshire. So today we're going to be covering off decision making and coming to making quick decisions. So we've got a few things to run through. We've got a few questions that are presented to me before the meeting today. So whilst you're all just coming in and joining the session, if you want to fire any questions into the chat box, feel free to do so. I'll try and cover off as many of the questions as we go through the session, and then we'll have an opportunity to answer any questions that I haven't covered off in the session towards the end. So decision making. Sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge to make quick decisions. Sometimes it can be one of those things you never quite know which is the right way to go. And one of the biggest challenges is quite often waiting to have too much information, waiting to have all of the information available to you before you try to make a decision. So there's a 40-70 rule. This was brought about by a guy called Colin Powell. Some of you will probably know who he is in the American forces. And he had an ethos that was built around, don't make a decision if you have less than 40% of the information available to you. So you need some information. You need to have some data to be able to make the basis of a decision to move forward. But at the same time, don't wait until you've got all the information you need. So his rule was 40-70. As soon as you've got 70% at most of the information available to you, make a decision. One of the biggest challenges of waiting for too much information is you lose momentum. Success loves speed. So therefore, quite often actually making a decision quicker means you're more likely to succeed. Waiting for all the information to come along, very often it means you've just waited too long and you've missed the moment. So what are the steps? What are the steps to creating great decisions and making great decisions? Gather intel. We need to get information, as I say, between 40 and 70%. So let's start making a list of the things that we want to consider. Write down all of the things that are going on in your head. Make a list of all of the bits of feedback that you get from the people around you. Ask for feedback. Ask your customers, ask your clients, ask your team members for them to give you their views. And most importantly, listen. So you're gathering information at this stage, not necessarily making the decision. So you want to ask the questions, you want to get the feedback. Most importantly, you want to listen to what you're getting rather than trying to make a decision too early. Once you get to the point of gathering enough information, so you've got between that 40 and 70, it's time then to start evaluating the possible outcomes. So what would happen in this scenario? What could happen in this scenario? What possible outcomes might you have that could come out of making a decision one way or another? You might actually need to have 3 or 4 decisions in mind to evaluate what the consequences could be. The other element is avoid analysis paralysis. So very often it's too easy to get drawn into the data, too easy to get drawn into deep and heavy conversations, and you end up paralyzing yourself with too much information. You get blocked by making, too much information on your mind, too much to think about, and then you can't make a decision. So we want to make this process as simple as possible, as easy as possible to follow. Ultimately, got to make a decision. So at some point, once you've evaluated the outcomes, you need to actually make that decision. So there's a nice little framework called a COD framework, which can help you go through that process. And the COD framework is CODD. So first of all, what's the challenge? What is the challenge that you're being faced with? So just identify what is the real challenge for you here, or for the business here, or for whatever situation it is right now. Getting clarity around what the challenge is, what the real challenge is, will help you then come up with the right information and the right decisions off of the back of it. Who is responsible for owning or overcoming that challenge? So when you're thinking about that decision-making process, who is it you've got in mind that would own that challenge or own the actions or tasks that are needed to overcome the challenge? Do they have the authority to overcome it? Have you given them the resources, the responsibility, the freedom to be able to overcome it? What other things do you need to put in place to help them have the framework to be able to overcome that challenge or that problem? Decide on what those 2 or 3 options are. So looking at, if we did this, what would happen? If we did that, what would happen? If we did this, what would happen? And which one of those 2 or 3 options is standing out to you the most? Which one is the one that you think, right, this is the one that's going to work best? And then do it. So what will you do? Who will do it? And when will it be done? Sounds like quite a complicated process when you talk it through like that, but if you make a note of the different parts of those 4 elements, the CODD. So just to recap, first of all, what's the challenge? Who's going to own it? Decide on different options and then do the action. So what will you do? Who will do it? When it will be done? If you make a note of that framework and start using it in a methodical way, over time, you'll be conditioned to be able to actually carry out that process in a subconscious way. You'll automatically start thinking, all right, okay, what's the real challenge here? Right, who's going to own it? Who can take responsibility for making sure it's done? What are the 2 or 3 possible outcomes if we go down different routes? Right, okay, which case then, right, I'm going to decide on this one. Who's going to do it? How's it going to be done? And what needs to be done to put it in place? So that's quite a simple framework. We've got a couple of questions around identifying and prioritizing the most critical problems the business is facing. So when you're thinking about decision making on lots of different tasks, this is quite a good framework to go through because it'll help you identify actually which are the most critical challenges. So if you've got 4 or 5 decisions to make, prioritize which one is the biggest challenge. So which one needs the most focus today? Work through the process on that one, pick up the next one. So understanding which decisions would have the biggest impact to your business moving forward means that taking a moment just to sit back and think about all of the different challenges, which one's the biggest, which one's the one that needs the most focus today. That'll help you prioritize which one to make a decision on first. Got another question come in. How do I handle situations where there are conflicting opinions within my team regarding a specific decision? You can't please everybody all of the time. So there may well be challenges around some of the decisions you make, but using a logical framework to analyze the decision in terms of which one's likely to be the best outcome should help to explain why you've made that decision, especially if you're doing the decision-making process with the team. So if you're going through this process with your team and the people involved, it should help everybody to understand why that decision has been made, enabling everybody to buy into that ultimate outcome that you've decided on. So it's a healthy approach to use a framework with other people so they can sort of see the process that you've gone through to arise at that decision. What else have we got here? How can I develop my intuition as a business owner to make better decisions in uncertain situations? How can I develop my intuition as a business owner to make better decisions in uncertain situations? Kind of goes back to the Colin Powell thing for me, really, is intuition will come when you aren't so focused on trying to get 100% of the information, where you know that you're not going to have all the information available. You know that you need some between that 40 and 70 to then think, right, I need to do something about it. I need to take action. So your intuition as a business owner will be very in tune with what it is that you're doing, your organization, the products or services that you sell or provide and things like that, but not getting too hung up on trying to find the perfect answer will help unlock that intuition. help you relax a little bit so that you don't have to have the perfect answer. And then using the framework to methodically go through a decision-making process, again, helps to unlock that fear around making the wrong decision, because you can satisfy yourself and your team members that you've followed a structure to it. So you've analyzed the data to come up with a decision that should be the best decision for the business. You're not going to get every decision right. Life doesn't work that way. You will make the wrong decisions, and that's okay, because if you recognize when the decision is not the right one, you can pivot and adapt. What's worse is actually not making a decision and carry on as you are. Are there any specific tools or software you can recommend for helping in the decision-making and problem-solving process? So the COD framework is one of them. Another one which is quite useful for when you're looking at different options. So as with the COD framework, where you're looking at those two or three permutations that might happen, is I quite like to reference the 3 Ps. So when you have a particular challenge or an opportunity or something you need to make a decision over, is actually look at the 3 Ps of the outcome. So it's what's probable. So if I do this, what's probably going to happen? Or if this is occurring, what's probably going to be the outcome? Then the next layer is to go, okay, what's possible? So what possibly could happen? So if I make that decision, it's probably going to do this, but it's possible that this result might happen. And then the third one is what's plausible. So it may happen, it may not. And those 3 Ps allow you to plan for different eventualities. So once you've got that decision made and you've got a probable outcome, you can put plans and actions in place to deliver that probable outcome. Possibly something else might happen, so you might want to think about what if it goes this different route. So what do I need to put in place to cover that if it happens? And then the plausible one is that outside chance that something happens. So you can plan and risk manage for a situation that may happen or may not, but at least you're covered. What else have we got? We have what are some of the ways to evaluate the potential impact of a decision before implementing it? So the 3 Ps is a great way of doing that. Go through the COD process of actually coming up with a decision, then use the 3 Ps to look at what eventualities might come out of that decision-making process. What else have we got here? How can I improve my ability to make confident and effective decisions for my business? So that goes along the lines again of being comfortable with the fact that you've got between 40 and 70% of the information, rather than me thinking you need to make that 100% absolutely spot on decision, and then using the steps and the processes to be able to evaluate the situation as best as possible and make the best decision you can in the circumstances. What else we got here that I haven't covered? How can I overcome analysis paralysis and make decisions more effectively? That's a great question, because it's so easy to get drawn into the data, get drawn into those conversations. So I guess my thoughts on that would be rank the severity or the importance of making this decision. So how important is it? Maybe scale it out of 10. So is it a really critical business situation that you need to make a decision? So if it's high profile, high importance, rank it up in the 8, 9s or 10s. And then assign amount of time and amount of space that you need to put aside to make the best decision. So, if it's a really, really important decision to make sure you've got the time to evaluate all the information, to look at the different permutations, and then make that decision. Flip side is, by putting a time frame on it, it means you don't get drawn into too much decisions, so too much analysis. So sometimes you want to set a time aside to just information gather. How much time do I need to put aside to gather information? Once I've got the information that I need, how do I know when to stop to then start the decision-making process? So involving other people will be able to help you with that as well. Involving people that hold you accountable to actually making a decision at some point. So if it's that important, speak to a coach, speak to a mentor, speak to one of your colleagues, somebody say, I need to make a decision. This is the deadline. I need you to hold me accountable to doing the work that I need to do to deliver a decision on time. Otherwise, you could get drawn into too much detail. What else have we got? What strategies can I use to communicate my decisions clearly and effectively to my team? Again, I think using the framework will help you to evidence the process you've gone through to make the decision. Not all decisions are going to be popular. Not all decisions are going to please everybody. You're going to have to make in business sometimes decisions that are not popular with your team. So being able to show them why the decision needs to be made, show them the analysis that you've done in order to make sure you've got the information that's relevant, show them the possible outcomes and the reasons why you're making that decision are going to be probably the best ways of explaining to your team why that decision's been made in the first place. So really important you follow a structure for that sort of thing. What else have we got? I think that's pretty much everything. I think I've probably covered. Okay, here's one. How do you find the right balance between making quick decisions and taking the time to thoroughly analyze a situation? So a bit like I was talking earlier, is about the grading of how important that decision is. And I don't think there's a right answer, but you're going to need to make a judgment call around whether it needs to be a quick decision and something you can just arrive to very quickly, or something you need to actually take a bit more time to really consider and reflect on. So I think grading the importance of those challenges or those opportunities will help you understand how much time you need to spend working on the decision to make sure you get the right decision. So I think that's all the questions. Pop them in the chat box if you've got any more, and we'll cover them off now. I'll give you a couple of seconds just to do that. So again, to recap, a couple of frameworks while you're putting questions in. The 3 Ps: what's a probable outcome, what's a possible outcome, what's a plausible outcome, help you manage the risks and put actions in place to cover eventualities. And then, of course, there's the COD framework, which is what's the challenge, who's going to own it, decide on the 2 or 3 decisions that you're going to make, and then what's going to happen to make you do the things that you need to do. So what will you do, who will do it, and when will it be done? So a couple of frameworks for you to work on there. I think that's all the questions. So thank you very much for your time. Hope you found that useful, and feel free to reach out to any of the coaches in the KnowMinutes community if you want some support on problem solving or helping you to come to quick decisions and important decisions in your business. Thank you very much. Take care. See you all soon. Bye-bye.